Hello and welcome back to another lore reading with me, Meoni, for Final Fantasy XIV. This is our continuation of the Encyclopedia Eorzea lore series, part of the history of Eorzea. We're all the way up to the Allagan Empire sections at the moment, and we just finished reading the Calamity of Earth and the Victory in Mericidia. If you want to see that previous part, you'll find that on the channel. This is all about Princess Salina's legacy, leading on to the page about the Forgotton Age. So without further ado, let's read Princess Salina's legacy. With the Crystal Tower buried, a civilization which had almost completely relied on the tower's energy to function was plunged into utter chaos. Machines ground to a halt, lamps fell dark, lines of communication and transportation were severed. Those who served on artificially levitated employment sectors, such as Azizlar, were suddenly trapped. The flow of supplies upon which they relied for maintenance of their facilities dried up. Without the energy and manpower to keep them in check, the chimerical aberrations contained in these quarantined areas escaped their cages and soon turned on their creators. Realizing that control would not easily be regained, the floating islands were quickly abandoned by the remaining Allagans. They would remain uninhabited by all but the Chimeras for 5 millennia until their rediscovery at the dawn of the 7th Astral Era. Though the worldwide calamity had claimed the lives of the majority of the Empire's population, including those of the royal bloodline, there was one descended from Xande I who survived the quakes. The young princess, Salina. Sharp-witted for her age, the princess was quick to realize the true implications of the fall of the circus tower, and the fact that it had not truly been destroyed, only buried. While the spire served to trap the horrors within, it also served to preserve them. Lacking the means to destroy the tower, she instead chose to utilize the power that had been granted her via her ancestors' most unholy pact. For as long as the blood of the Xande line remained intact, there would ever be a force which could keep the cloud of darkness under control. Utilizing the remains of Allagan biotechnology, Princess Salina transferred her bloodline and the power it held to a trusted ally, with hopes that it would endure until it was again required. Proof of this power became known as the Allagan Eye, and can still be seen today in many of those with the ancestral ties to the Makote Seeker of the Sun, G-Tribe. It says, ironically, it was another calamitous event that saw the re-emergence of the Crystal Tower from its 5,000-year slumber. As for the horrors that lurked within, it was as Princess Salina had feared. Xande, Amon, and the Cloud of Darkness had not perished in their time buried beneath Hydaelyn. Fortunately, nor had the Imperial bloodline. And through the efforts of the G-Tribe and a brave band of heroes, the threat of domination at the hands of evil was once again thwarted. That's all about present-day situations, a bit of a recap for you of the Crystal Tower as it is right now. So we move on to Une and Doga. Seeking to raise Xande from the dead, the technologist Amon looked to the first Emperor's descendants. His subjects were Une and Doga, two members of the royal bloodline. Using techniques perfected in his dark laboratoriums, Amon created dozens of copies of each. He called them clones, echoes of the original made flesh, yet lacking a soul. Thus, these experiments were put to use as weapons when Amon could glean no more from them. Though Une and Doga both supported the Emperor's second ascension, they learned of his descent into madness with horror. They gave unto two clones their spirits, a measure for if they themselves failed to thwart the Emperor. Clones are said to have been imbued with the unbending purpose to end Xande's unholy covenant. Before the original Une and Doga could prevail, the Crystal Tower entered its eon-long slumber. When it awoke after the calamity, so did the two clones within. Fortuitously, they then came upon a group of scholars, calling themselves Noah. After many trials and tribulations, it was this fellowship that saw an end to the first Emperor and the fruit of his terrible ambition. Now we read the Forgotten Age. There exist almost no records of the years immediately following the fall of the mighty Allagan Empire. This dark period is loosely referred to as the Forgotten Age, for very little is known of how its people lived. The 4th Astral Era, the fall of civilization. From what information, mostly based in oral tradition, remains of the early 4th Astral Era, Blame for the fall of civilization was placed firmly on man's lust for knowledge. The people deemed that the answers to life's mysteries were best left with the gods. Pursuit of that which lies beyond man's ken was seen as a sin, and it was this covetousness that proved the impetus for his destruction. A widespread shunning of any and all number of high learning began. Books were burned, and parents refrained from teaching letters to their children. Surviving elegant technologies were destroyed, buildings were toppled or buried, and the learned, what few remained, were exiled or even killed. Civilization took a giant leap backwards to a time not unlike the Second Astral Era. The pendulum had swung, and an era-long thirst for knowledge was quickly replaced with an unmoving fear in the heavens. Stories of the Allegan Empire survived now only in scripture, where the fallen civilization was reduced to a simple device used to teach lessons on the sin of hubris. For approximately 1,500 years, a number long speculated, but only recently confirmed with the discovery of an operating expulsion node in Azizlar, placing the abandonment of the floating research complex at 5,000 years ago, the silent war against knowledge continued. The church manipulating what knowledge, if any, trickled its way down to the masses. Religious leaders went even as far as introducing a new alphabet for their holy scriptures, taught only to men and women of the cloth, so as to solidify their control over the realm through the continued illiteracy of the common people. It is therefore ironic that this alphabet for the privileged would eventually evolve into the Eorzean script used throughout the realm today. The fifth umbral era, the Calamity of Ice. As is the case with nearly the entirety of the Fourth Astral Era, the Great Calamity which would end the period is also shrouded in mystery. Tribal legend and local folklore does, however, speak of a seemingly endless winter that brought with it a bitter cold, raging snowstorms, and giant rivers of ice. Without the ability to grow crops, much of the population perished or was forced to flee to the south and its more temperate climes. It is believed that for the years that encompass the Fifth Umbral Era, or as it is also known, the Age of Endless Frost, much of the blood-brine sea was frozen solid, on one hand preventing fishing and decimating the populations of sea life, but on the other allowing for the migration of Makote tribes from southern Ilzabard into northern Eorzea, tribes made up of descendants of the very same Makote who were persecuted against and driven from Eorzea by the Allegan Empire almost 2 millennia earlier. The newly hardened seas of this frigid era provided the tribes with a means around the massive peaks of Girabanya that prevented their return in the Fourth Astral Era, and while there was little awaiting them in the time-encrusted realm when they arrived, their uncanny ability to hunt granted them a means of survival until the frost had melted. Little section here, it says, "It was not long after their return to the realm that the Makote learned of a new Eorzean alphabet. Tribal seers were quick to claim that the fact the number of letters in the alphabet, 26, directly corresponded with the exact number of the Seeker of the Sun tribes that had made the journey across the frozen seas was most fortuitous, subsequently convincing the tribes that they should each take one of those letters into its name." And then the final tiny little section says, "It is not uncommon even today for massive floating islands of ice to appear in the winter moons along Eorzea's northernmost coasts, the Far Reach. In the Fifth Umbral Era, however, these frozen mountains were said to have appeared as far south as the Jade Sea." So there we go, some quite interesting story there, especially with the Makote backstory, but also the fall of the Allegan Empire there. It's quite interesting to see how far they fell. Yeah, I'm quite interested, especially with the idea of more story to do with Princess Salina. It didn't really answer much in regards to that, in my opinion. I'm sure there's probably more to do with that. It's certainly a section I didn't know about personally, and the more I read through this with you guys, the more I discover that I didn't realize overall. Anyway, we've got quite a long way to go. The next lore video will be on the Age of Enlightenment and the Weeping City of Mark, so that should be quite entertaining, and that's all about the discovery of white magic. So I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of this. This video series will probably go on for quite some time. Hopefully it's quite entertaining to listen to me read this stuff, especially, you know, some of you might not have access to the lore books, And as a result of that, you know, it's a perfect way of getting stories told to you, or you might like them just being read to you. I'm sorry if there's any pronunciation problems or anything like that. I do have dyslexia, so I'm trying to overcome it as best as I can and try to be as clear as possible as well. Either way, thank you kindly for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.